they all overlap. And that's when I started collaborating more and more, bringing all my agencies together. And then you meet wonderful people like Norland and Miss Patricia when you do that. Sorry, that's my daughter. There is no story. There's me, there's, I don't have a particular story, an amazing story to say that a moment triggered me. It just happened. Like I stumbled upon these things because when you walk out of your comfort zone, you see this cloud and smoke, and then you just walk into it. You don't have a choice after, at one point, you don't have a choice to go back. You just have to keep walking further. And that's my life now. That has become the story of my life. And then being a person of faith, I also have another aspect to my faith communities. I was born in India, which is a very predominantly Hindu country. My parents sent me to a Catholic school because that was the best school in town. And of course, I grew up in a Muslim family. So being an interfaith person is not anything different than being me. I am a collaboration of all those faiths. A lot of my values, a lot of my ways of dealing with things come from my Catholic school upbringing. The principled way of life, the disciplining that I try to impose on my own child, all that comes from there. And of course, my Muslim values are part of my being. And then, enjoying a colorful, complex relation with all these faiths come from me being in a country where so many faiths are practiced. So I do a lot of interfaith work. I sit on an organization called SEDIMA, which functions out of the Seaside Center in Encinitas. If any of you are from Encinitas, it's called San Dieguito Interfaith Ministerial Association. And when I first initially joined it, we had done a lot of work around dialogue. We brought speakers from a lot of different faiths. Every month we had a different speaker. We learned about different faiths and religions and practices and different parts of the world that people came from. Even if they practice the same faith, there were people from different parts of the world that practiced it differently. But lately, because of everything being so heightened, we started talking about racism. And our focus is every other month we have a dialogue where we focus on the conversation of racism from a faith-based dialogue. I started out initially having it with the youth because they're the leaders of tomorrow. It's very important to give them a seat at the table. It's very important to hear what they have to say and empower them to become the leaders of tomorrow. It's not a process that will happen overnight. It's something that we have to start giving them those tools today so that they can be excellent leaders of tomorrow. They can lead the way to a brighter future. So we started with the youth, and then we have faith-based leaders. We also have clergy from the sheriff that come because they have seen a lot of that other end of it. So they bring that perspective to the table, and we talk about those things. Dialogue is key to opening doors. And that's what we facilitate is dialogue, just, talking to people. Like me walking up the street and having a dialogue with my neighbor who is on the opposite political spectrum as I. But the ability to have that dialogue is what keeps us neighborly. So having conversations, having just wonderful conversations with people. I'm sorry, I've been talking for a while. I don't know how many minutes I've spoken for. I had a timer, but it stopped.
No, you're doing great.
Okay. Well, I don't even know if anyone has questions.
We have, I'm going through, there's a number of compliments, obviously, for you. A number of people said, well, where do you start? We look at all the things that you're doing. It's absolutely amazing. And I remember when I first moved to Vista, the first thing I had going was Tazeen was running for office, and I had her sign up in my front yard right away. I hadn't met her, didn't know her, but I had heard such amazing things about her that I thought, well, that's, she's a woman and that's the person I want. One of the questions that we had, Tazeen, was how do you get started?
Sure.
You know, you started something with your neighbors, but you're doing so many different things. You know, I'm here, I feel like I'm not doing anything, and I'm inspired by you to contribute. What do I do? Where do I start?
So this is my philosophy, and I've been using a lot of it in the last election, because people talk about, oh, you should vote for a woman candidate, you should vote for a person of color, like all these layers of conditions that people put upon you. But I believe you vote you, right? So for me, sorry, that was my timer of 20 minutes. So I believe that everything starts with me as an individual, and my struggle, my journey is, I am an immigrant, I am a person of faith, I'm a person of color, I'm a person I'm a woman, first of all, right? So many layers of my identity. So what calls to me? To me, when I see a situation, I say, oh, like when I started working with the immigrants' rights, I saw that immigrants were being mistreated. So what calls to you is very important for you to begin with. Because if you superimpose yourself in a situation where you don't connect, then you're not able to give it your all. So you start where it calls to your soul. So as I'm just taking a leap here, but as Norlin, a woman who is passionate about other individuals, when Norlin sees that her neighbor, her sister, her friend is mistreated,
Yes.
then it tugs at Norlin's heart.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to stand up for that. Whether that person be mistreated by the police, whether that person, you feel like, let's say somebody lives on the north end of Vista and they have a property and the government encroaches, the city of Vista is encroaching on your property. Then you stand up for that person, that friend of yours, that sister of yours. That's where you start. So you start where your passion tugs at you. There's so much to do. I mean, honestly, I don't even scratch the surface with the things I do. And I like you mentioned, I do so many different things, but I don't even scratch the surface because there's so much more. But for anyone to start where your heart is, that's the best place, because eventually it's all going to link up. Like you, Norlin, may start by going to city council and speaking for your friend whose property is being encroached upon or doesn't have a street light or whatever. But that will lead you to political activism. That might lead you to civil rights of other sorts and human rights, right? So honestly, all of it comes to one big barrel, like I realized later in life. But what speaks to you is what's going to take you the furthest and keep your heart in it and your mind in it.
That sounds like wonderful advice, Tazeen. And I wish your little bell hadn't rung, because we'd like to hear more from you. I think we have to have everybody come back. This just isn't enough. We feel like we're scratching the surface and there's so much more we'd like to know. Thank you so much.
There's a question, I think.
Yes, let's take a look at that one, and maybe whoever wants to can pop in, or I don't know, maybe we should leave it for the end. But where do you draw your strength?
In all honesty, my faith is a driving factor for me, but a lot of my tunnel vision or my vision for the future comes from being a mother. Because I don't want to hand off to my child a worse off world than I received. I want to make it better. And that's where it keeps me driving.
That makes very good sense. I think we can all of us who are mothers at least can identify with that. Thank you so very much, Tazeen, for participating. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Rochelle Smar, who has joined AAUW, so we've got her. I'm so excited. And I hope Tazeen and Corinna will want to join us also, because wow, we would just be floating ahead on the energy from the three of you. Rochelle is the Director for Service Learning and Civic Engagement at Cal State San Marcos. It was my pleasure to meet her. We were both at the Census 2020 meetings, and I saw and heard this dynamic young woman and thought, oh, I want to find out who she is. So I went barging over and kind of said, hi, hi, who are you? This is who I am, and handed her my card. And she was so gracious and so bright. And so it's been, we just kept contact. I thought right away, oh, she's got to come and speak to us. I bet she's got quite a story. She's also faculty for the GEL course, and she'll tell you what that is, because all of us, as we were doing publicity for her, found out what it is. It's a new kind of course. So it is my very great pleasure to introduce Rochelle. And so you're going to get to meet one of our newer AAUW members, and just a real inspiration.
Thank you, Norlin. That is a wonderful introduction. And let me just tell you, I'm just out of words. Like, I feel like Tazeen and Corinne did all the work, and I'm just going to tell you a small piece about my engagement, but wow, they are amazing women. And, one day when I grow up, I hope to be just as informed and as engaged as they are, and hope that through AAUW, I can make some more connections to doing some of the great work that they're doing, because wow, I'm inspired, and it's only 11:20 on a Saturday, so I think we're doing pretty good. I have
more after you.
Right. So I have a small tendency to talk really fast. So I have created a PowerPoint. So if you don't mind, can I share my screen to kind of walk us through my background and answer some of the questions you've shared with me, Norlin?
I believe so. We didn't know that you were going to have a PowerPoint, so let's see.
I have the option on my computer to share.
Okay, maybe you should do it. I don't know if our webmaster is Andrea. Are you here?
Yes, Rochelle may share. She has the share screen button, so she.
Okay, great. Okay, I thought that was okay. I wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I should have told you ahead of time. A little easier for me to present.
Not at all.
All right,
of course.
Wonderful. So I just have a few slides. Just kind of want to walk you through my own personal journey, but also my educational leadership journey as well. And feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions. So on this first slide, I just want to introduce myself, the early years. I am a Christian. I'm a woman of faith, similar to Tazeen. I'm Pentecostal. Even more, I'm Church of God in Christ, fourth generation. My grandfather was a pastor. My father is a minister. And it just makes sense that, the center of my life is in church. I am an African-American woman. I was born in Wittenberg, Georgia, or Wittenberg, Germany. I apologize. I was born in the military, in a German hospital, also the military base. So I have a German birth certificate, but because my father was in the Army, I have a U.S. citizenship that way. And one of my greatest memories is being at a water park in Germany in the middle of a winter storm. So I remember fondly growing up in Germany my first 6 years as well. And as I mentioned, I was military raised. So my father served for 26 years. My sister was in the Air Force for 6 years. And then 6 months after she detached, her husband tagged in for 12 years, and he's on his way to 20 years in the Navy. I have several friends and colleagues and family members that are in the military, but I've chosen to kind of rebel rouse in higher education. So I went to school while they went to serve the country that way. Before my father retired, I went to 11 different schools, both in the US as well as in Germany. And 1 month before I graduated high school, he retired after serving 26 years. And a fun fact about that is that my sister's Hell Week was during September 11th, and we actually still traveled to see her graduation in San Antonio, and it was roughly about 10 people on the airplane. But it was a pivotal moment because my father was still in the Army, and he was able to wear his uniform one last time as he penned my sister as she started her Air Force journey as well. And on the side here on this picture, my mother had a little plaque made of all the places we traveled to. And it's really small, but we didn't really join up with my father until they got married in Hellebrunn in Germany. So there's 12 places here on this little chart, but we didn't really, come into fruition until he was already like 4 years in the military. but they're still going strong. And my father graduated or retired in Barstow, California. And so as I was going to